Okay. What's your name, please?
Janet Alexander.
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
Are you one of the 31 voters whose ballot did not get counted in the 2018 election?
No, I'm not, but my son was, and I mailed his ballot.
Oh, did you mail his ballot on time?
I did. I mailed it on Monday between 9 and 9:30 at the Decorah post office.
Oh, great. And did you understand that without a postmark that your son's vote wouldn't be counted?
Actually, I did, because I work for the auditor's office, and we had a training, and that was part of our training, that might be a possibility. It just never occurred to me that Monday wasn't soon enough. And then it hits you that this is actually happening to your son. And it's ironic because I have worked for years to try to get him interested in being part of the political process, and he always said, it doesn't matter, my vote's not going to matter. And he moved here a couple of years ago and decided that this was an election that he wanted to vote in, and he was ill that day, and I said, I'll take your ballot in. So it's just ironic that, in fact, given what he was feeling all these years, his vote didn't count.
Oh. And what do you think can be done to make sure this never happens again?
Well, I went in and talked with Ben Steinis. You know, we have a good relationship. I worked for his office, and I wanted to know what the process was and what else could be done. And he had a couple of solutions. One was that he's suggesting either there be a finite cutoff date after which no ballots are accepted. So they would have to be in the office by 9 o'clock, for example, on election day, before the election results are announced. And he said if that wasn't acceptable to people, another possibility would be this thing they're talking about called the intelligent barcode. Mm-hmm. And that involves, apparently, according to Ben, putting some kind of a barcode on each ballot. And then that barcode would be scanned as they came back into the office again, and it would show exactly when it was processed through the post office. And what Ben says is that nobody has the resources at this point to have the equipment that you would need to be able to put those on and to process them afterwards. So that would mean funding from the legislature. The legislature would have to determine that that was a priority and do it.
So how does that happen? How can we make that happen?
Ben said that all of this goes through something that I think he said was the state government committee in the legislature. And so far, I mean, they've been lobbying for years to get this part of the Iowa Code changed. The auditors have been, because they don't like this ambiguity either, and it puts them in a difficult position. But that this committee has refused to pass this down to the Senate floor for any kind of a discussion or a vote. So we need to put pressure on the legislators to saying this is a priority, that our votes need to count, and we need to be sure that the election process is fair. And I don't see how this can be a fair or valid election if the Iowa Code is set up in such a way that auditors individually get to determine whether votes are counted or not. Voting is fundamental to our sense of fairness, to our sense of whether this is a democracy and whether this democracy is working or not. And we have to be able to believe that when we vote, our votes are all counted, regardless of who we're voting for. And that should be a number one priority.
Did it occur to you to go into the post office to get the ballot stamped by hand?
Actually, it did, because I went through training with the auditor's office, and I didn't know how many people it actually ever happened to, but I realized it was a possibility. But I also thought in Decorah that you couldn't get any mail processed here, that everything is forwarded through the Waterloo post office, and so it made no sense to try to do that here. But I also think that it's important that the system be transparent enough. If I'm a trained person in election officials and I don't know how to get my son's ballot counted, how's anybody else going to be able to do this? And the system has to be transparent enough that people can just vote and know that their votes are counted.